Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and I'm joined today with Kim Fortner and Paul Forshee. They are both local historians at Trigg County. They are coming here to talk to me. But first off, guys, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Well, we got plenty to talk about as far as Trigg County. You guys got a great connection. Let's talk a little bit about your Kentucky connection, your connection to Trigg County, and so forth.
I was born and raised here in Trigg County and have a lot of family roots here in Trigg County.
I think both of us have roots that go back virtually to the founding of the county. I too was born and raised here, and various branches of our family go way back to 1820s.
You all also operate the Facebook page. Is it what tell us about the Facebook page, I guess, real quick.
It's the Katie's Trigg County Bicentennial Facebook page. We started the page in 2019 in anticipation of the bicentennial, which was in 2020. And then we had a project for the bicentennial we posted daily history stories each day throughout 2020, something that happened on that day in Trigg County history. And then we continue to use the page for other history stories and pictures today.
It's very impressive what you all have done, especially with the book. And if y'all want to, real quickly, we can plug the book in. On this date, Historical Facts of Trigg County, Kentucky from 1820 to 2020. Let's how long did it take y'all to write this book?
3.5 years.
That is quite a bit of which I've had some guests talking about how long they wrote a book, and there's been some people who took about a decade to write a book. So you guys at least are a little quicker than that. But it's a fascinating book. Where can people get the book at?
They can just go online, Facebook. You can look it up there. Basically, we're just selling it out of our houses, and so they can send a check to me at my home address, and then we'll ship from there.
That's pretty good. When we're talking about Trigg County history, it's one of the western counties. I'll tell on myself here. The farthest west in Kentucky I've been, I went and visited the Jefferson Davis Memorial there, and picked up a dog.
Sure.
But Trigg County is a little farther than that. About 30 miles or so?
I'd say so, yeah. Maybe, about 30 miles further west. The interesting thing is there's still two hours of Kentucky past us.
Yeah, well, that's
to
true.
The west.
That's true. And I've heard people say before, a lot of people, especially me being in central Kentucky, people will say Western Kentucky, and they consider Bowling Green Western Kentucky, but really, Bowling Green is not really Western Kentucky at all.
No, we laugh about that.
Yeah.
It's not even the beginning of West Kentucky.
No, it isn't. So coming from Trigg County, where does it start? What is West Kentucky, maybe?
Oh, I would certainly think Todd County is West Kentucky, and Christian County is absolutely West Kentucky. And of course, the counties to our north, Caldwell County and Livingston, and then Lyon County, and then we cross between the rivers, which is between the Cumberland River and the Tennessee River, which is now Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake. And then you get into the Purchase area of Kentucky, the Jackson Purchase. So
that's West Kentucky, people. You get it together. June of next year, I'm actually going to be making my first trip to Trigg County. And we'll have a little meeting there with the Historical Society and talk some Kentucky history. I know you all have some very important information about previous podcasts and videos that we came out with. So Henrietta County.
Well, one of the big mysteries, as you had said, was who is Henrietta? Where did that name come from? And although we cannot prove it 100%, we have a theory that we feel is most likely where Henrietta came from. One of the large landowners in Land Between the Lakes at that time was Milton Egner. And when they voted about the county being formed, they voted at his house. And Milton's daughter was named Henrietta. And we feel like that is most likely where the name Henrietta came from.
There you go. Well,
the bridge over Kentucky Lake at this time is named the Egner's Ferry Bridge, which would have been Henrietta's father.
wow. Yeah.
He ran a ferry there.
Do we know if he had any political connection?
Not that I know.
I
of.
don't know.
No. Well,
I think that I think they just petitioned the state government, the state legislature, to form this county. But then, of course, the local vote did not pass.
Yeah. Well, I just kind of wondered if that because I searched the legislatures and tried to find like anybody with the last name Henrietta, but like that didn't, obviously nobody had the first name of Henrietta either. So I kind of thought that might be a connection, but I guess, I mean, legit though, it makes a lot of sense that it would be this person's daughter or named after this person's daughter.
That's who we think it is.
All right, well, we can etch it in stone if you all want to. Keep it on the wet ink, I guess.
I think we etched it in stone.
So, all right. So let's get into a little bit of Trigg County history. We're going to try to talk a little bit about it. Trigg County was the 66th county of Kentucky and named after Stephen Trigg. He was an early pioneer, early settler, an early politician in the Battle of the Blue Licks. If you read any kind of early Kentucky history books about Daniel Boone or Squire Canton, Stephen been there in 1820 and formed from Christian and Caldwell. It's Boy Marshall Lyon, Caldwell, and Christian County. County seat. A lot of people are going to say Cadiz or something like that. You all are the locals. How do you pronounce it? Let us hear it.
We agree with you. We say Cadiz.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, is pronounce anything like the locals pronounce it, and you won't get in trouble. So.
We actually hear locals pronounce it more than one way.
Okay. Well, everybody, we're in Kentucky. People talk about Louisville, and it's Louisville. I don't know.
True.
I know people can say Louisville and all that kind of stuff, but I've said it before my entire life, so that's what I'm going to stick with.
There you have it. Also point out that another of our borders is the Tennessee state line.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I didn't neglect Tennessee on purpose.
Many people forget that Tennessee is our border because of Fort Campbell. It takes a large chunk of the county across the southern edge. And so civilians don't have access to that border for a good part of the county. Okay.
Wow. I didn't think about that, but that's right. So quite a bit of the border. That's not obviously the structure, but like the area that the government, I guess, operates.
Fort Campbell straddles the state line. Mm-hmm. It's on both sides in Kentucky and in Tennessee, and it's the main gate, the main entrance to Fort Campbell is in Christian County, but it stretches all the way toward the west toward Barkley Lake. It doesn't quite go to Barkley Lake, but it does cover a substantial part of the border in this county.
Yeah, again, not neglecting Tennessee on purpose, but so we'll have to talk a little bit more about Fort Campbell, and you already kind of mentioned the region of Trigg County. What's the layout though of the land? Is hills, mountains, all that kind of stuff, I guess, and it's in the Pennyroyal region and so forth. What kind of geographical things are?
It's predominantly rolling hills, no mountains here. And as you are in the eastern section of the county, it's much more rolling and flat than when you go toward the western section of the county. It becomes very hilly, very steep, which you're approaching the Cumberland River at that point.
So as far as, I always ask this question, but depending on archaeology digs and find any presence as far as Native Americans, that sort of thing. I think Chickasaw might be considered mostly in the west of Kentucky. Anything to that nature?
Yeah, there is quite a bit of Native American history here, especially in the Canton area along the Cumberland River. Of course, before the advent of roads, the river was the interstate highway. But before there were states, of course, the Native Americans made great use of the waterways. And there are Indian mounds and quite a few Indian Native American sites along the Cumberland. Yes.
Hmm. Whenever I think of, there's the ones over in Ballard County, but
Sure.
so kind of the same, I guess, culture. I mean, not the same, similar culture. So as far as when we get, as moving down the timeline and so forth, long hunters, exploration. When did that first started coming into, or when was that first contact made?
The Goodwin family probably arrived in about
90-ish.
Yeah, maybe 1790.
We kind of count the Goodwins as they were in the Cerulean area of Trigg County, and about the same time a Wadlington family came into the Caledonia area of Trigg County, and there was about 1790, 1791. They were the first white settlers in what would become Trigg County.
Yeah.
Of course, it was Christian County at the time.
Which it was a very large county. Christian County was, a lot of those early counties were quite large.
Yes, yeah. And of course, then most land was settled with land grants.
Yeah.
I would say probably more than 90% of the land in Trigg County was land grant.
Give us an outline, the best you can, of the towns and stuff in Trigg County, like where does Cade is located, and then like the other towns as well. That might help people kind of know the layout, I guess.
Sure. Cadiz is predominantly dead center. To the northeast is probably one of the oldest communities in the county, and that would be Cerulean. And it's named after a spring there, the Cerulean Spring. There was a great resort area there. The spring was affected greatly with the earthquake in 1811, New Madrid earthquake. And then going south of there on the Christian County line is the community of Gracie. And then further south of there, you get down into the community of Roaring Spring. And then traveling along the state line to the west, all the way to the Cumberland River, you would come upon Linton. And then coming up the Cumberland River, midway would be Canton. And then to the far north on the Cumberland River would be Rockcastle. Then we frequently err by neglecting the area between the rivers, which is also Trigg County. And the predominant community over there was Golden Pond. It was a little bit isolated in the years because there was certainly no bridges. And it was between two rivers 9 miles apart, and a little bit isolated.
Yeah. Now, you throw out, and I've seen this on maps before, the town of Rock. Where does it get its name from?
It's a geographical formation on the Cumberland River. It mostly is underwater now, with Barkley Lake being impounded.
Well, okay. Well, so just being from Rockcastle, but it's a very, I guess, unique name, or not too common.
Yeah. True.
So those first settlers and so forth came in. Typically agriculture, farming, that's kind of what's going on. When you say to the Revolutionary War land grant, anybody or any of those that you know of that may interesting story, or I guess where they came from?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Kim and I believe that everyone has a good story. And give us enough time, we'll find it. Who comes to your mind? How about
Let's see, Lipscomb
yeah,
Norfolk.
Lipscomb Norval is a very interesting character who had a sizable land grant here. Lipscomb Norval actually died in Nashville, but he lived a great part of his life and raised his family here in Trigg County. His daughter was living in Nashville, and that's where he went in his old age. But he actually literally, so many people say they fought with Washington, but he literally fought with Washington at the Battle of Monmouth. And he had a sizable land grant here. And he had a family that was, his children were all extremely interesting and did very interesting things, serving from senators from other states. 2 or 3 of them started newspapers, and it was just a very interesting family.
You're right, though. Everybody wants
but-
to claim that they were with Washington.
They do. When we did research, he literally was at the Battle of Monmouth, and that's an interesting battle on its own. That's a whole segment there about the difficulties, the heat, and the soldier. More soldiers died of heat than died of being wounded.
Mm-hmm. Any other stories? Anybody else? Any other families? Which I say that, and you're correct. It's a loaded question because there's just so much out there, and I mean, you're correct. Everybody has a story, and I mean, somebody fighting with Washington is pretty much. I mean, that's pretty top of the line. Most people come from Virginia or other places as far as settling.
I would say most of our settlers are from Virginia. There are a few from North Carolina and up through Tennessee, but predominantly Virginia.
And I kind of see. What was the year that you said? What would be the earliest as far as white settlers in Trigg County, or what would become Trigg County?
About 1790, 91, and somewhere right in there.
Okay. Well, and I asked that basically just because when we're talking about Kentucky settlers, you got central Kentucky is about 1775 and so forth, but then once those people kind of started getting their foot down, people started going more west, and that's just kind of giving a time frame of people getting there. But like right before statehood. So now, would it have been still Lincoln County then, or would it have been?
No, it was Christian County.
Christian County. Okay, I was trying to think in my mind when those counties started, those new counties were formed.
Or it was Logan County, and then it was Christian County. And honestly, I can't remember what year Christian.
I'm not quite sure when Christian County was formed. It could be 1795.
Yeah, it was in the 1790s.
Yeah. So
it was Logan before
that. It could
that.
have been Logan just before.
Mm-hmm. Because Logan would have been formed in 92, because that would have been because Logan County was formed when the state was first founded.
As the things progressed westward, one little county at a time, and it was very much the frontier. I mean, there was literally no one here. There were no white people here. There were basically no contemporary English Native American settlements.
Wow. So let's say those first settlers. What's some other names? Throw out some other names there of first settlers. And we don't have time to tell all the stories, but just the big names, I guess.
Okay. Well, another man we might talk about is Abraham Boyd. The settlement of Canton is on the Cumberland River, and he came up from Nashville and settled in what would become Canton. It was first called Boyd's Landing after him. And he built, first of all, he was friends with Andrew Jackson. So we get that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then he moved here, brought his family. He built what is called the Canton Hotel, or the Old Brick Inn. It was built before 1820. And it is still standing today, and it is being used as a bed and breakfast.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. That is obviously any kind of historical building that's still standing is pretty awesome. And preserving it is, being used is good. So Canton, how big is Canton compared to Cadiz?
It's not.
No.
Canton used to be quite a booming community, a good-sized town. It was a river port. There were warehouses, brick warehouses along the river, and in its heyday, it was larger than the size of Nashville at the time. It was just harder to get up the river to Nashville. And I have to remind people that when you go up the Cumberland, you're going south.
Yeah.
But to get to Nashville, there were quite a few shoals, and the boats had difficulty getting there. You had to go when the water was up. But Canton was quite a bustling community. And of course, the crops were shipped, tobacco predominantly was shipped overland, like from Hopkinsville in Christian County, all the way to the Cumberland River at Canton, and then loaded on riverboats and exported down toward New Orleans.
Okay. So, well, I was thinking, being on the river, that it might, have flourished a little bit, at least as far as towns kind of go.
Yeah, once the trains came in and once the highway system was developed, Canton just really disappeared. It just dissolved and went away.
It's interesting you bring up the railroad and so forth, because a lot of times the railroad was the big thing that boomed up a town, and then once the railroad left and the highways kind of started, that's when towns kind of decreased.
Canton lost its necessity. I mean, by necessity, it was a river port, and it was sizable and a good location for a couple of 3 counties. But once the trains came through the other counties, it was not necessary to bring the product to the river.
Yeah, that happens. So when the county was formed, the population was 3,874. The first government was organized on May 15th, 1820, at the house of Samuel Orr in the town of Warrington. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what's Samuel Orr's story, or is that did he fight with Washington?
It's a great mystery.
Oh.
The little community of Warrington is basically a farming community of 2 or 3 houses, and has never really been much more than that. It just turned out that that's where the first day of court was held there. And then Robert Baker had property in the area. He had a farm in the area that is Cadiz. Cadiz was not a town at all, and he offered to donate 52 acres to the county to create a county seat. And they took him up on his offer. It happened to be a very sizable spring, which the city of Cadiz water supply came from that spring until about 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So that spring has served Cadiz very well. It's a very large spring. And so the 1820 was the year it was formed. 1820, there was a census. There was it was roughly 50 people in Cadiz.
Wow. Wow.
But it was just a town that was created out of thin air.
Well, that actually happened more than, well, I say more, but I mean, it didn't happen often. But that was the case for many counties when they were formed. The county seats were actually created within that moment. There wasn't a town, there wasn't anything.
Right.
And that's just the way it was. But pretty interesting, because when you think of the other communities around, and not to say there would be anything bitter or anything like that, but say these other communities were here. But like you said too, Cadiz is centrally located, so it made make sense to kind of make that your county seat.
Now, there was some argument, about 3 years later, about whether the county seat needed to continue being at Cadiz, because some people at Canton did wish that was the county seat. And so it came back up for a vote, but Cadiz continued to be it won out, and it was the county seat.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, one of the big reasons for counties, and everybody talks about how many Kentucky counties there are, was just for traveling sense. I mean, if you're in a county, like back before before Trigg County was formed, they had to go to Christian County or wherever to do their business, and that was a long trip
Oh yeah.
for them. So it makes sense to. I'm glad Kate is one out. It makes sense for it to be in the middle. Um, so as far as industry, I mean, up until let's say the Civil War, I'll be looking at farming, and so what was some prominent things going on as far as what people did?
I think up until the Civil War, there was nothing that we would consider industry. The iron industry was centered around the Civil War and leading up to it.
Yeah.
It was predominantly a farming community. Timber was an industry, but until the iron industry tuckered out, I suppose, the timber industry was basically just feeding fuel to the iron industry.
The iron industry was mostly in the area that is now laying between the lakes, or what is called between the rivers, because there was large amounts of ore there and large amounts of timber, as he said, that was needed to fuel the furnaces. The first one was built there about 1843, and it was by a man named Dr. Thomas Tennessee Watson. And then he soon partnered with Daniel Hillman. And Hillman, of course, became an iron tycoon in later years, had several furnaces that went through the Civil War and a few years afterwards.
And then he moved his operation to Birmingham.
And that iron ore stuff, people probably don't realize how much work that involved. Like you said, there's the digging of the iron, and then there's the cutting of the trees to fuel the furnaces, and I mean it's a non-stop process, and it's quite amazing how much it how much it took. And you're thinking about before the Civil War or the Civil War time, how much of that would labor and so forth it would take to do all that sort of stuff. It's pretty.
Interestingly, of course, you might imagine there were quite a few slaves that were employed engaged by Hillman, but there was also a Chinese labor component.
Oh, wow.
There are 2 Chinese cemeteries in the county.
Wow. Well, that is pretty unique and amazing. Yeah. And those people mainly worked in the iron ore?
They all worked in the iron ore industry. Yes.
Wow.
But Hillman was one of the largest slaveholders in the state.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And what was that guy's name again?
Daniel Hillman Jr.
Okay.
He had several iron furnaces, and I think when you calculate his slaves, you kind of have to go to several counties to kind of gather them all up, because if you just counted them, say at Center Furnace, which is in Trigg County, you wouldn't come up with a total like that. I've heard estimates of as many as 500, but I know at Hillman, at Center Furnace, if you look at the census, there's well over 100 slaves there.
Wow, that's a lot. He would be up there in the whole state. Was he from Trigg County and Kate is, or?
No, he was born up east, about around New Jersey, I think, and then moved here. But he came to Trigg County from Tennessee and settled here, and he is buried in Nashville, or in the Nashville area.
Okay. Okay. Well, so that's a different, talking about different counties and so forth, and all that. Obviously Eastern Kentucky, you get coal, Central, you get horses and farming and so forth, and then you have coal in Owensboro as well, but not too many places that had such an iron ore production, I guess. Yeah, not that they weren't. I mean, there was iron ore in Montgomery County and other places, but that's a bit more unique of an industry during that time period and so forth. So everybody always wants to talk about the Civil War. What was the Civil War in Trigg County?
It was predominantly Confederate.
Mm-hmm.
There were, I would say, maybe a fourth of the county were Union sympathizers. That's kind of my estimate, just in reading and talking. But I think that they were outshouted by the Confederates because the Confederates seemed to carry the predominant part of the history books. The articles all tend to lean toward the Confederacy, but there was certainly Union sympathizers here.
What about any skirmishes, anything like that? Any kind of events or so forth? Because a lot of people, they focus on Perryville and Wildcat Mountain or Richmond, the battles, but there's a lot of stuff happened in counties, the brother versus brother and all that kind of stuff.
Well, of course, the Battle of Fort Donelson happened just across the Tennessee line from Trigg County. It was a major breakthrough for the Union, and to get there, you had to travel the Cumberland River. And so all of the ironclads and Grant's approach was from the north, going up the river toward Donelson, and that entire attack happened from the north, and all of those troops and all of those boats would have passed right through Trigg County. There was a skirmish at Canton. It was interesting. The Confederate troops came in kind of quietly, having learned in advance that there was going to be a boat there, and the boat was to destroy supplies, I think.
Yes.
Confederate supplies.
Yes.
And so because the Confederate troops were so small in number, they just kind of hunkered down and waited. And when the boat docked, they opened fire, and eventually the boat had to just back off the dock, and they stayed out in the water for, I don't know, a couple of days or something, and then they left.
Nathan Bedford Forrest was involved in that particular little skirmish.
Yes.
And one little interesting thing is the tales were told that the Canton residents took cover behind the Indian mounds that are there to avoid, anything, any of the shots and everything.
The other Civil War question: did the courthouse burn?
Oh, yes.
Yes. It was burned. Yes.
Yeah.
General Lyon is well known for burning courthouses across Kentucky. He burned 7, and Trigg County was one of those. He was burning courthouses that had been used by Union forces. And so he came to Hopkinsville on December the 12th of 1864 and burned the Christian County Courthouse. Then he came to Cadiz the next day and burned the Trigg County Courthouse, and then went on to Princeton and burned Caldwell counties.
Wow.
I don't know why they did these things. I don't know why they were so aggressive towards the courthouses. They so much damage was done.
The one good thing, though, they allowed all of the records to be taken out of the courthouse, so we have a complete set of county records.
Oh,
even
perfect. Well,
has burned on multiple occasions.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have all of our records.
Oh, that is.
But to address your question about why that he felt like they needed to burn courthouses, I will remind you that they were predominantly teenage boys.
That's true. That's true. Well, they showed a little bit of maturity there to say, "Hey, okay, get all the records out there."
They did.
And then
They
we'll
did
go.
allow it. They did allow it.
Oh gosh, and that uh, it's one of those things. What was the other reasons that the courthouse burned? Just how many times has the courthouse burned? Maybe I should ask that.
Well, I guess only twice, right? Has it
Okay.
burned?
We've had there's this huge discussion in this county about how many courthouses we've had, because there was a courthouse that was constructed, and before it actually got finished, it was faulty and part of it collapsed.
Oh.
Do you count that as one or two? Um, It burned in the Civil War, and then in 1920 there was a great fire in Cadiz.
Oh, it burned in 1892 also. It's burned 3 times.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And with all the fires and all of the incidents that happened, and the first courthouse, by the way, was log. It was a log,
Yeah.
and I think that we had a jail before we had a courthouse.
Yes.
Oh wow.
The jail was also log, but so yeah, I think we've had 5 courthouses, and
Gee,
then
whew.
now we've endured the state, who has gone across the state installing enormous justice centers. We have one of those now too.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that might be one day I'm going to figure out who's had the most courthouses burned. Uh,
Well,
you all are up there pretty high, I think.
we've had 3 burned, but I think we've had 5 courthouses, and that may not be unusual for the counties, considering a lot of them were. Of course, I don't know whether maybe all of the counties' courthouses started out as log buildings. I really don't know.
Well, most of them probably did. I know. So, Rockcastle County, their courthouse burnt 3 times.
Mhm.
One I do believe was done because of documents being held that they wanted to destroy, so they burnt the whole courthouse down. The Lincoln County has never had a courthouse burn. They've had 2 courthouses, because the first one, as you said, was just a log cabin built in somebody's house,
Right.
or held in somebody's house there. But the one that they have now, it's been standing for a long time, and it's never burnt. But there's others. I mean, it goes. Just about every county's had a courthouse burn at least once. Not all of them, but a lot of them have. But you think, though, you build it out of wood and everything else, and I mean, it becomes easy to burn.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, or well, I should say easy to burn. It becomes problematic if something was to happen.
We've had many fires in Cadiz. We have somewhat kind of laughed and said that the entire town has burned, but not all at one time, because like one block would burn, and then 2 years later another block would burn, and then
Oh,
5 years later another one, and
Yeah.
so
yeah. And well, that again, one of those things that happens. What always is terrible, because it's happened more recently. You see these historical buildings burning, which that's the own thing. We're going to pause right here with our discussion about Trigg County history with Kim Fortner and Paul Forshee. We will have another episode coming soon, so stay tuned for more Trigg County history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.